Government of Telangana, and I have a very distinguished colleague from Delhi, Mr. Ashwini Kumar. He is the Joint Secretary in charge of the SEED program in India. You know that all the policy level decisions steered by the Government of India, he looks after it. And I would welcome all of you today to this particular session on behalf of the conference organizers. With these introductory remarks, we would begin the session, which devotes itself to seed trade and marketing. As you know that we can produce all seeds, we can have the quality control, we can have the seed certification system, but we need to sell them. We need to see that they have markets. And for that, what are the constraints? What are the opportunities? What needs to be done? We are going to discuss this morning. I would first request Mr. Venkatram Vasantwada to speak on global seed marketing, the strategies and approaches. You have the floor.
They're just setting it, I think. Will you please call them? They are, I think, yeah, just tell him. So before they set up this presentation, I think good afternoon, the chair, Mr. Ashwin Kumar, Mr. Partha Sarathi, Mr. Gary Hall, and Madam, and all the distinguished audience in the hall. So while the topic is about the global marketing strategies and approaches, while they are different in different geographies as we operate, depending on the farm sizes and also depending on the technology evaluation, most of my references would be with respect to India, and then I would kind of keep referring it to the other parts of the globe, some of it how that is applied. But mostly I think we would restrict our discussions to India, Asia, and obviously Africa. Is it done?
It's asking access.
Access, sir?
Access for permission.
So how do we do that?
Okay.
Or you want I can put it in my laptop? Okay.
Who is an expert on international institutions which govern the seed trade. I would request him to kindly address.
Good, it's on the screen. Good morning, everybody. As the Honourable Chairman has said, my name's Jerry Hall. I'm from the United Kingdom. I work for the Scottish Government based in Edinburgh. And if I look as if I'm a bit sleepy, it's because I've not long got off the flight from the United Kingdom. So this presentation has been prepared by my colleague from South Africa, Eddie Goldshag, who I think had intended to be here today but is otherwise detained. So I'm going to go through Eddie's presentation and just talk a little bit about the role of international organisations, and then linger on the ISF, IPPC, UPOF, ISTA and the OECD. So seed is traded worldwide, and there's constant introduction and development of new varieties, and everybody's looking for new genetic material, new varieties for food security. And part of the trade requirements are export documents. And on top of that, you need to fulfill the requirements of the importing country that you're going to send the seed to. And in fact, at the end of the day, you can end up with lots of different documents for lots of different things. So things can be complex, and specialist organisations have developed, arose from this complexity to deal with the various issues. And many of these organisations use internationally accepted methods and standards to help facilitate the trade in seed. And these organisations apply a level of confidence and trust to enable this seed trade to take place. So I've got here, Eddie put here a picture of some ball bearings, and this is meant to sort of indicate that that a number of commodities don't vary. You know, ball bearings are all the same. You make them, you process them, you finish them, and you end up with the same product, so long as your equipment's all working well. But in the case of biological material, there's a lot of variation that occurs in seed particularly, and that variation needs to be dealt with through these organisations and the processes put in place to ensure that the materials traded meets various standards. So these following organisations play an important role in this trade of seed. So we have ISF, which has a number of regional organisations, which is APSA, AFSTA, ASTA, and for me in Europe it's ESA, ESA. The IPPC, UPOF, ISTA and the OECD. So seed companies produce seed that at the end of the day need to go to the farmer, and those farmers can be in different countries from where the seed is actually produced. And breeders put a lot of effort into research and development, trying to produce new varieties of various species, and it can take them years. And then they have to go through a variety release program or a national listing program, as we would call it. Then on through seed production, then processing and packaging, and then a form of quality control, and eventually ending up with marketing. So, looking at the individual organisations, we'll start with ISF. So it was formed in 2002 following the merger of ANSEL and FIS, bringing together two areas of expertise, which was plant breeding and seed trading. And FIS, the Fédération Internationale des Semences, was founded in 1924 when a Congress of Associations of Seed Producers and Merchants was held in London. And the reason for that Congress was to discuss and propose solutions to support international trade, and the rules were then drafted and adopted in 1929. And then in 2005, it became possible for seed companies to gain accreditation under the scheme. And here is a world map with pictures of or locations of where the various companies are, the member countries, and so on. So the role of ISF is to facilitate the free movement of seed within a framework of a fair and science-based regulations, to promote the establishment and protection of international property rights for seeds, plant varieties and associated technologies, to represent the interests of the seed industry at a global level and keep its members informed of developments within the industry and in the international regulatory environment. So the value of seed, the global seed market is worth around about 4.5 billion US dollars, and the international trade in seed is around about 12.8 billion dollars. So, and this trade has been greatly facilitated by the use, availability and adoption of international certificates for varietal identification, quality testing and phytosanitary measures. And here's a graph showing the value of seed and how that value has shot up in real terms since the year 2000. And so every year thousands of contracts are signed between parties for the trade and production of seed, and the ISF rules are designed not only for international sale transactions but contracts for production of seed from the seed stock of the breeder. And it's a requirement that company members of ISF should apply all the ISF rules in all commercial agreements as a way to work within a common and recognised structure. So the ISF rules evoke a clarity, they have clear steps and procedures, harmonisation, a use of standard terms, an acceptance of practices and usage of the seed industry and trade, and trust, reference to well-known and established international rules. And they all can also act in cases where arbitration is required. And ISF has some fairly detailed and complex arbitration rules, but there are generally three steps. One is a kind of a mediation where somebody acts as a facilitator to help parties reach agreement, or a conciliator to motivate the parties towards a final settlement, and can also be asked to give an opinion, and then an arbitration tribunal made of three arbitrators that organises hearings and can at the end of the day make a judgment. So then we'll move on to the IPPC of the FAO. I must apologise for some of these slides. There seems to be, on this laptop, it seems to be sort of crushing things up together a bit, so I'm sorry about that. So, the IPPC, the International Plant Protection Convention, is an international treaty that aims to secure coordinated, effective action to prevent and control the introduction and spread of pests of plants and plant products. The convention extends beyond the protection of cultivated plants to protection of natural flora and products. It takes into consideration both direct and indirect damage by pests, so it can include weeds. It also covers other objects or material that can harbour or spread pests. And the convention provides a framework and a forum for international cooperation and harmonisation and technical exchanges between members. So, international movement of humans, animals, plants and their products has increased significantly, and these support the spread of pests and diseases. The export and import of plants and plant products provides an income for many people in a country and those countries importing their products. And pests and diseases associated with these products are also responsible for problems in the global seed trade. So the importance of an international structure to support free trade of plants and plant products and provides a risk management of pests. So the results of the World Trade negotiations of the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, GATT, from 1937 to 1944 has formalised about 60 agreements, and these form a legal foundation for the international trading system. And the WTO provides an agreement on the application of sanitary and phytosanitary measures which came into being in 1995, and it sets out the basic rules for global agricultural trade and recognises 3 standard setting bodies which are for plant health, animal health and food safety. So their standard setting bodies are the IPPC, the International Plant Protection Convention, the OIE, International Office of Epizootics, and the Codex Alimentarius. So the rights of members, that members may protect humans, plants and animals within their territories from harmful foreign pests, that is to set phytosanitary regulations, and must base all regulatory measures on scientific data, so these must be technically justified and appropriate. So the scope extends to items capable of harbouring or spreading pests, such as storage places, conveyances or vehicles and containers, and provides for cross-border movement of organisms for research or for other purposes, and includes imported biological control organisms. And it gives contracting parties the right to regulate imports in respect of plant health, and regulatory measures should only be applied when necessary, and the measures should be consistent with the risk and at least restrictive, technically justified and based on scientific facts, non-discriminatory and transparent. That means that they're published so that people can read them. So the IPPC is responsible for issuing phytosanitary certificates which help for export certification, manage surveillance of pest outbreaks and control of pests, establish and protect pest-free areas, undertake pest risk analysis for the development of phytosanitary measures and ensure phytosanitary security. So now we'll move on and have a look at UPOF, which is the International Union for the Protection of New Varieties of Plants. It's an international intergovernmental organisation based in Geneva, Switzerland, and established in 1961 by the International Convention for the Protection of New Varieties of Plants, the so-called UPOF Convention. And the mission of UPOF is to provide and promote an effective system of plant variety protection with the aim of encouraging the development of new varieties of plants for the benefit of society. And the UPOF Convention provides the basis for members to encourage plant breeding by granting plant breeders' rights and intellectual property right, the so-called breeders' right. So there's 74 members of UPOF and 15 initiating states. So the convention provides the basis for members to encourage plant breeding by granting breeders of new plant varieties an intellectual property right. And in the case of a variety protected by a breeder's right, the authorization of the breeder is required to propagate the variety for commercial purposes. And the breeder's right is granted by the individual UPOF members. So part of the reason for plant breeders' rights is that plant breeding is a long and expensive process. Plant varieties can easily and quickly be reproduced, and breeders need protection to recover their investment. And it's a requirement to gain access to plant genetic material and technology. And here's a slide showing the applications for plant breeders' rights by region. And you can see that Europe is a leader there, the EU 27, for which the UK perhaps won't be a member fairly soon, but who knows? Anyway, and you can see the number of applications for other countries, and the sort of general increase in the number of applications over the last 20 years or so. So in order to get plant breeders' rights, the variety has to be DUS, it has to be distinct, uniform and stable. It has to have a variety denomination, that is, it needs to have a name, and it needs to have some form of novelty, and there are various formalities and fees to be paid. And on completion of all that, it's possible for a member country to award plant breeders' rights on a new variety. And in order to carry out DUS, UPOF provides lots of documents to help the process, and I've listed a few here. You've got the general introduction to DUS, where there's a selection of documents, the technical documents, the test guidelines, and there's different guidelines for a whole variety of species, practical and technical knowledge, and cooperation in examination. And these guidelines can be used for national variety listing and variety descriptions, and they're referred to in the OECD rules. So ISTA, I believe we've already had a couple of talks on ISTA. So it's an international non-profit association of seed testing laboratories, and it operates under the governance of the government of the member countries and their distinct economies. And here's a sort of list of sort of memorable dates for ISTA, so starting with 1876, when Frederick Nobber published his famous handbook on seed science. Then in 1924, 26 countries participated in a meeting in Cambridge, which resulted in ISTA being founded. Then another big milestone was in 1995, in the ISTA Congress held in Copenhagen, where ISTA membership was open to private laboratories and private seed companies. So the objectives are to develop, adopt and publish standard procedures for sampling and testing seeds, to promote uniform application of these procedures for the evaluation of seeds moving in international trade, and to promote research in all areas of seed science and technology. And then there are 82 countries that have at least one member laboratory, and 64 member countries with voting rights. So here you can see some of the ISTA membership: 226 member laboratories, 136 accredited laboratories, 57 associate members, 38 personal members, and a new category for industry members. And here are the countries that have ISTA accredited laboratories. So the ISTA structure. So it's an international standardization of reporting results, which results in the Orange International Certificate, international standardization of methodologies, which are all recorded in the rules, international standardization of laboratory performance, which is an accreditation program, and an international exchange of scientific results, which appears in the ISTA seed symposiums and their extracts. And it's recognized by a number of organizations, some of which are listed here on this slide. So the ISTA certificates are like visas for international seed trading, and I won't delve into that because I'm sure that you've had that already. And just a few points that it's good to understand: that ISTA developed its unique methodology for proficiency testing programs, and it's mandatory for ISTA accredited laboratories to participate in proficiency tests, and it's a voluntary for non-accredited laboratories to participate in these tests, and it's possible to change the scope of accreditation at any time, and reaccreditation audits take place every 3 years. So the last of our international organizations, this is the OECD seed schemes. So a general overview: it was originally formed in 1961 out of the HICC, which was founded in 1958. And there are 8 different seed schemes with 61 participating countries, 62,000 varieties eligible for certification, and round about 1,100,000 tonnes of certified seed each year under the OECD banner. So the benefits of the OECD is it's contributing to a globally harmonised seed system, and it facilitates trade and market access through harmonised standards and certification procedures, provides breeder reassurance when distributing new varieties, and provides a framework for varietal control of seed multiplication abroad. And it ensures farmers have access to guaranteed quality seed. Its aim is to improve crop productivity, both in terms of yield and quality, enhance transparency along the supply chain, providing traceability, contribute to food security by ensuring higher overall production, boost export of seed and foodstuffs, and it plays a role in the international market and contributes to the reduction of barriers to trade. So the seed schemes provide agreed common standards for varietal identity and purity, isolation of seed crops, provides a generation system, and secure sealing. And it's a benchmark in international trade for varietal identity and purity, and it's a requirement if you're trading seed into Europe and several other countries that the seed must be OECD certified. So that's a quick run through the international organisations, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, for a lovely presentation, an overview of the various international bodies governing both seed trade as well as seed standards.
It is more in terms of what different organizations do. So to start, seed is well-being in a nutshell. With the intervention of advanced research and technology, the potential of seed, as all of us know, can be enormously enhanced to contribute to a meeting the food production demands with the growing population. So agriculture sector is getting more attention worldwide, largely because of fast track in productivity to ensure that there is food security to meet the growing population, which is estimated to be around 9 billion by 2025. We are also looking at advances of precision farming, smart farming, optimizing the cost, and ensuring that the farmers get more income than productivity. The global seed market, I think the earlier speaker also spoke about it. It is valued at around 60 billion US dollars. This is the 2018 one, growing at a CAGR of 6.5% between 2011 to 2018, estimated to grow at around the same rate between 6 to 7%. So we are looking at a $90 billion seed industry by 2024. If you look at the regions, North America contributes to around 35%, Asia Pacific contributes to around 30%, followed by Europe, Latin, Middle East and Africa. Due to enhanced varieties, we have high yielding varieties, we have biotech crops, we have crops which talk about improved nutritional qualities, reducing crop damage, and obviously disease and pest resistance. Major drivers to the growth of the seed industry is urbanization and changing diets. We are witnessing that a lot in the vegetables as well as even in the field crops. Rapid population growth, obviously the food versus feed debate because of the biofuels expansion, greater prosperity in largely in the emerging markets, if you have to say, and growing demand. So this is largely the macro indicators where the industry stands, what are the drivers for this industry to grow. So if you look at seed purchase, if I have to just put it in 4 bullet points, and most of you know, it is largely about a security, about the quality and the trust what the farmer has in a particular variety, in a particular brand. From a profitability standpoint, while seed does a lot to the final yield, seed cost as a percentage of the total cost of production would vary anywhere between 5 to 7%. So this is not a very high cost input, but then obviously it is the most critical input which actually makes a huge what one has to say contribution to the productivity. It is a very rational purchase. It is, when I say it is a rational purchase, it is not an impulse purchase where you can choose between a Bisleri or an Aquafina. The farmer, applies a lot before he actually decides to buy a particular variety of seed. So there is a lot of caution. Obviously there is a lot of utility value, and when he makes, like any other consumer, he would actually compare between different technologies, between different brands which are available, and then obviously you will. So these are basically, the 4 points largely which a farmer would look at while he is purchasing a seed. Seed demographics, if you look at it, we can classify it into horticulture crops, which are large areas, very high awareness, evolved value chains, and high commercial focus. Obviously the value chains are much more evolved in an horticulture crop because the end product and the processing and all. Cereal crops are largely geography specifics, varying farm sizes, low to mid awareness, and obviously in the value chain you would see the government also actively participates, and as well as there are private value chains in cereal crops. When I say this, this is basically, the MSPs, the procurements, what the different governments actually do for some of the cereal crops. Vegetables are largely cash crops, very high brand, cautious, small farm sizes, and there are a lot of private value chains which have actually, got evolved in these vegetables. In terms of traits, we have, we have also experienced it in India, the success of some of the traits, the GM crops and the non-GM crops. So this is largely about, the seed demographics. Then you can also classify it as per the farm sizes, large farms which are mechanized, high awareness, and obviously the farmers are more tech savvy. The mid-sized farms where the awareness levels are definitely not as high, largely, driven by cereal crops. Small and marginal farms, which is largely a situation which exists in large parts of India as well as in Africa, which is, less awareness, very little mechanization and things like that. Obviously the other demographics are literacy levels, access to markets, access to, the value chains, awareness levels, and, the technology penetration. So that was about seed demographics. All of us, we also know that there is a seed life cycle. It starts from research, which is basically a line development, hybrid development, and hybrid screening. Then you get into product development, which is product evaluation, positioning, and extended geographical large scale demonstrations. And then obviously commercialization in terms of a soft sale, and then scale up, and then you keep replacing products where, as per depending on, the new technologies which are emerging, and sometimes products also do break down when, some new things come up. So if I have to talk about specifically the seed marketing strategic approaches, as I was telling you earlier, this is a very, very rational purchase, and I think we need to give all the credit to the farmer. While we all talk about that he is gullible, he is also hoodwinked by different other things, in our experiences, at least I should say, he is one of the most rational and a very intelligent consumer, and he makes his choices. It is not about speaking English or, Hindi, but he understands what he wants to do and he makes the right choice. So that is why the fundamental thing which all of us do in the industry is demonstration. So you have to demonstrate what your product is actually, giving it to the farmer, either in terms of yield or any other things which we are talking about, either a pest and a disease resistance, or in terms of nutritional value and anything. So that is one thing which is largely done by most of, the organizations, which we call as the product differentiation activities. Obviously then there is a lot of sampling which is done, there are free samples which are distributed, there are demonstrations which are held side by side, there are large scale field demos and all. So this is the first and most important thing if anybody wants to actually market seed. And this is, in my experiences, even in, working in the markets in Africa, this is no different either in Africa or Southeast Asia or South Asia. This is one of the fundamental things. If anybody wants to go and sell seed to the farmer, you need to demonstrate your technology, and he then makes a choice looking at the crop and looking at what, he gets out. So these are some of the things, the rights. While there are some research gains, there can be a lot of agronomic gains which can happen if you can, play around with the population, if you can play around with the dosages in terms of fertilizer, or if you can develop a package of practices to get the best out of the seed. So these are some of the things which obviously all the companies do. And then of course there are technology trials which are, large seed treatments. Now seed treatment solutions are not as evolved as they are in, the Western world. While there is a seed treatment which is even done, in Asia as well as in Africa, but seed treatment as a proposition to the farmer, it is still evolving, I would say. So most of the seed treatment which is done by most of the companies here or in any other parts is largely done to ensure that the farmer gets some kind of a protection against some of those diseases and outbreaks. But in the Western world, I think seed treatment solutions are a package and a value proposition itself, which is a different thing. It is still in an evolution stage, I would say. The second one is branding and promotion. So there are different branding and promotion things. So I've just represented the company which I am doing it, but this is similarly what everybody does. Lot of promotions which are done, lot of road shows which are done, lot of messaging which is actually done. But more importantly, the other thing which we are now witnessing is the expanding genetic base. So there is a lot of collaboration which is now happening among various companies in terms of in-licensing and out-licensing. Now this is something which, at some point of time, it was very evolved in vegetables, but even in cereal crops now, organizations are thinking that, you alone can't do anything, and there is always a lot of merit in collaborating with partners in terms of licensing their seeds, and you out-license your seeds and stuff like that. So widening market reach. Now this is one of the big evolutions which is happening. I have seen that bit even in Africa, but we are also seeing that in largely India. Retail channels or e-tailers. So most of us are so used to an Amazons and Flipkarts and everything now is on a go. We are similarly witnessing, a similar kind of a thing even in the input industry in India, the retail channels or the e-tailers. So we have Big Heart, we have AgroStar, and we have Ninja Cart. This is something which at this point of time is not a very big contributor, but I think over a period of time, as the farmers develop a lot of confidence around this, I think these are some of the marketplaces which will actually, become big. There would be at a point of influx where it can actually, become as big as any of the other channels. And this is also very important because, most of the farmers who are into the hinterlands, and if you look at the Amazon actually tracks purchase by pin codes, and one would be surprised that even in the remotest corners, Amazon products go. Most of the time we also experience that the farmers don't get the right seed, because of a physical distribution not being available in the last mile connectivity. These channels, if they can develop a credibility and if the farmer gets a confidence, I think this would be one of the big changes which we would, see. The other one is the farmer producer organizations, which the government of India is definitely encouraging a lot, and this is a very good, development which is actually happening. Some of you who are involved in this FPOs, Maharashtra is one very good example of FPOs, how, organized they can be. So this actually gives the farmer or the group of farmers a collective buying power, and as well they can also negotiate when they are actually selling an output. So the FPOs are the next big thing, and even in the government of India, if you look at some of the schemes what they are talking about, I think FPO is on the top of the radar. So probably pan India, the registered FPOs are 1000 FPOs which cover about 70,000 farmers, and it is right price for produce, good agronomic practice and agri input distribution. So these are some of the programs which will actually widen the market reach and which will actually help the farmers get, the best quality of seeds. Users, the other one is ENAM. ENAM is also again one of the big program which the government of India is actually championing. This is, farmers in India as well as in any other part of the world, at least in the world in which I got exposed to, even in Africa or other places. Farmers have to physically go and, sell their produce, and then obviously either they might get a price or they might not, and there are other complications which are involved. So ENAM is one of the very ambitious program with the government of India. This is an online trading platform. This is again a marketplace for the output. So while there are some hiccups, but I think we are seeing a good traction around this, where the farmers can go and sell their produce online, and obviously all the quality standards also are published there, and this would actually be a big convenience for the farmer in terms of selling his output. So states and APMs integrated on ENAM, there are 585 markets, 16 states and 2 union territories. So this is a huge online trading platform which the government of India is actually encouraging. The other one is public-private partnerships, which most of us do participate, and there are many, at least in Africa as well as in India, where certain geographies and certain crops where the respective governments as well as the private organizations come together to solve an issue either in terms of adoption of high-yielding varieties, mitigating some of the food security issues, or in terms of crop shifts and things like that. So these PPP programs are one way of ensuring that there is a sufficient technology transfer which happens to the farmer, and the new varieties and the new technologies are given. And this is something which is pretty common across, at least India and Africa. And some of it, at least, I have a personal experience of, participating in this. We have listed down some examples here, but there are many outside. User's voice, I think most of the time, at least if you look at a decade back or 2 decades back, these were all media dark markets. When I say media dark markets, the penetration of print and TV was very, very less. But today, with the advent of penetration of print media, the TV media, and obviously the Internet of Things, even in most part of the countries, so there are a lot of tools which the marketeers are using in terms of endorsing the brands through some of the popular public figures, and most of the companies actually do that. This brand endorsement gives a comfort to the farmer because he sees them as role models in their own areas, and this is something which mostly the non-ag companies do, but I think now we are seeing even the agriculture input companies are participating. And obviously, there are farmers who are basically ambassador farmers. One of the things which all of us we know, that while we go and talk about our products to the farmers, farmers will always have something in their mind saying that, okay, he is coming from a company and then that is the reason why he is talking good about his product. So most of the times, and all of us we have learnt in our formative years, saying that the peer farmers are the best ones because he always looks up to the farmers in his village or the farmers in his community to basically either adopt a product and then he follows it, typically the early innovators and all. So these brand ambassador programs are one of the most popular programs which are used by most of the seed industry companies, where actually they use the product and then they also talk to their fellow farmers about the product. The last one, which is actually changing the whole world, market research. All of us, we used to do a very conventional market research which continues. You have surveys, you have personal interviews, you have field trials, you have secondary data and all. But today, with the advent of digitization, I think the things are going to change dramatically. There are a couple of things which are going to happen. There is much more real-time online data which is available. The speed of decision making has definitely gone up, and there is a lot of cost optimization which is. Is it happening sufficiently enough? I would say these are early things which most of us we are doing in the industry, as well as the government is also championing it in most of the countries. So the whole farm advisory, which was basically a physical advisory which our extension agents or all of us we used to go and tell, today is available to the farmers on the go in his application, either in terms of the weather forecasting or in terms of the procurement prices or in terms of an agronomic advice during the crop cycle to apply the right kind of pesticides or to apply the fertilizers or any of the other practices. So this farm advisory is becoming a big, what one has to say, big intervention which is being done by most of the companies. But also what is also happening is this is also giving a lot of comfort to the farmer because he does not have to, get agitated about, whether somebody is going to come, whether his problem is going to get resolved or not. And in fact, even for countries like us or even in continents like Africa, which are small farms, buying a tractor or owning a mechanical equipment is a very costly one. So you have, if some of you and most of you would know an Uber, what it does. We have a version of that in India which is called as Ola also. So there are marketplaces which are now being formed where tractors can be hired by the farmers. You have to go it is like an Uber of, the tractor business. But compared to, the years earlier, today the farmer is much more informed. The government is constantly giving advisories, so are, companies, in private sector about to the farmers about what he has to plant, what kind of a crop he has to take, given the delay in the monsoon and whether it is the right time and all. So this weather forecast is becoming very, very handy. There are 32 weather forecasting companies, at least in India. Obviously there is IMD, which is the big daddy of all, but there are multiple companies which are doing, and there is a constant research which is happening, how granular and how much closer you can actually go in terms of predicting a weather forecast, because climate change, now we are all realizing it is a reality, and this is how things are going to be, and how do we find solutions to that. The other one is in terms of the crop data. There is a lot of agronomy information which again, on an app the farmer can get it, and then he can make, choices. Barcoding and seed traceability, a very ambitious program. Mr. Ashwini Kumar is here. I think this is again one more thing which actually, some of the private companies started doing it on their own. But now there is a big ambitious program which I think, the Joint Secretary is here, and we always, we had discussions with them. This whole seed traceability and barcoding. So this will actually give a lot of comfort to the farmer in terms of the kind of seed he is buying, and he can also be sufficiently confident about the quality and the whole process. Because we are talking about seed traceability from a consumer point of view, the food traceability, whether the food I am consuming, whether it is a GM, whether it is non-GM, I want all the labelings, I should know what are the nutrients in it. So similar kind of a thing is what obviously the farmer would also is expected to know, and I think this is something which we all have to also provide. So I think we see huge benefits around this whole barcoding and seed traceability, because you will have farmer getting a lot of comfort around the seed he is buying, but more importantly there is a lot of farmer data also which one would get, and where one can then design specific programs suited to that class of farmers. Then the other one is in terms of the alerts which one can send it to the farmers at the right time. So that is how the seed marketing is evolving. If we have to talk about a future strategic approach, I think collaborations are the way to go. One company or one organization, either in a public and private, can't do everything, and that is what used to be the thinking. I think a collaborative approach in finding solutions to the climate changes, to the food security issues is the only way to go. I think it should be public-private, private-private partnership. Alternate channels, conventional brick and mortar channels which are already there, while they are there, I think accessing alternate channels, it is evolving, and probably I think the organizations should work very actively towards it, and that would be a new way to go. We never thought that we would buy things from Amazon or we would buy things from Flipkart, probably even 7 or 8 years back, and today everybody is buying products and all. So different alternate channels. Solutions, not a product. I think the farmer now is not interested only if you just hand over a seed to him and come out. He is actually looking for a package. He says, okay, how do I grow this seed? What can I get? How do I get the best out of the seed which one has supplied? So I think companies have to go through a solution mode and not selling an isolated product and coming back, and that is going to actually get evolved. Digitization to digitalization. Now I think the reason why I have used these two words is digitization is we are now only taking an early steps of bringing all the hard data onto a digital platform. Now how do we leverage all these data and how do we develop algorithms and analytics to make meaningful this thing is a path forward which I think will emerge. Artificial intelligence backed approaches, AI can be used wherever there is a human eye. I think you can actually replace it with artificial intelligence. Probably in the ISTA exhibition which is there, we will actually demonstrate how AI can be used in quality control. Probably you can visit those stalls and see most of the seed, when we actually the paddy seed and all, we do it with a physical labor and we remove all those remnants and all. So there are processes which can now be done much more faster with much more accuracy, and hopefully you can get a peek of some of the AI tools which are being used in terms of these. Augmented reality and virtual reality. Now these are also experiments which are actually being done, And while we again heard about this in the non-agri sector much, but some of you who are actually keeping close pace with all the digitization efforts, AR and VR are also being used in our industry. There are pilots which are actually being done by many companies, and once we actually crack this bit of it, I think probably we can educate the farmer and disseminate the technology with much more information and with much more accuracy, because more often than not the technology transfer is done by the last guy in the chain, and with all due respects to him, his knowledge around a crop and all is restricted and limited to a certain thing. So if there are more questions and if there are more deliberations, it goes actually back and forth. So AR and VR tools will actually be very, very handy to the farmers in terms of the technology transfer. And obviously digital wallets is something which probably 5 years back I have seen this in prominence in Africa, at least some of the countries in Africa, the whole digital wallets, the subsidy transfer and things like that. And these are also going to be the new norms even in India. And DBT again, the Joint Secretary is here. This was again an ambitious program by the Government of India in terms of the DBT, at least in fertilizers, and there were pilots which were actually done. And hopefully once it goes into a large scale thing, not only even in fertilizers, the whole subsidy transfer by a direct benefit, I think this would also be a big game changer. So we are going to see some of these things panning out as we progress in the years to come. Thankfully to all the technologies which are actually emerging, and obviously our farmers will also benefit if we apply all these tools and techniques there. So these are alternate channel partners which we talked about. I would not take much time. These are basically nurseries. Nurseries are actually a very big channel again in India. There are around 3,000 numbers, these are registered, and I don't know how many of them are there. Because the farmer today does not want to buy seed. He says, okay, you grow the seed and take that, I will buy a seedling, but I might pay a higher cost. Then obviously the exporters, they are big channels. If there are a lot of companies who work with them, because India also exports a lot of vegetables, that value chain if somebody can crack. And then obviously the online channel partners in terms of Corpn, SatSure and Stellapps. So that is what it is, the seed marketing challenges. Some of that has been spoken to. Local regulations, there is some, in certain cases there is a policy paralysis. Not only I am talking about India specific, but even across the country. It is a very seasonal business, as all of us know. Our fortunes are tied to largely weather in these parts of the world wherever we are operating. Product life cycles are only getting shorter because of the increasing incidence of pest and disease, new technologies emerging. I told about customer looking for solutions. So he is no longer interested in a product, but he is saying, okay, give me a package and how should I grow it. We talked about how it is a rational buying, security, profitability, caution, comparison and utility. So most of us, we should take these factors into consideration. Seeing is believing is still a notion. So my experiences around transfer through a digital media in terms of the crop advisory and all, and these are evolved farmers I am talking about, where they say, nay, at least you or your representative should come and at least touch the leaf and then tell me. So still, while we are also going through a digitization process, still seeing is believing is a notion, and farmers normally would not make a call by seeing some of that on the net or things. Low literacy levels are which we continue to have a challenge in all these Asia and African parts. And then customer segmentation, it's a process which most of us will do it, and I think we have to be much more sharper and better in that. And of course the technology penetration still continues to be very, very low in this part of the globe, largely in Asia and Africa. So this is what is from my side. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Venkatraman. I think he has given an excellent, it's a very